that the issue was getting more and more prominent. And what we did in this short and somewhat scientific study, but with Becky here, I want to be cautious about over-claiming. You used LexisNexis to look at every story they had from the years 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, and 2007. And we used a variety of search terms, but most of them were around the question of poverty, politics, campaign, presidential. And what we found, particularly when we compared the year 2003, which was the pre-presidential year, to 2007, which is our pre-presidential year, is a dramatic increase in the amount of coverage of the issue of poverty, 145%. We then went back and we used other refinements of that focus. For instance, we looked at only the top 20 papers in circulation, and we found a 103% increase. And we found it pretty much across the board. Now, it's worth pointing out that in 2004, the presidential year, there was more coverage than in 2003. And so we would expect in 2007 and 2008 that there'll be more coverage of poverty than we already found in 2007. And we think that's basically a good thing, and I'll talk about that briefly. We've had a discussion between us about what might be the causes of this, and it's a somewhat speculative enterprise. We tried to break it down. We saw that coverage of John Edwards, for instance, was a significant factor, but so was coverage of evangelicals who are being discussed in the context of poverty and their interest in it, and that was a significant factor as well. I think underlying it, the fears about the tightening economy and what that might mean for low-income people was also a significant factor. And I think that that's a worthwhile discussion, but what I'd like to just focus on here to close my remarks is a couple of things that I think are important takeaways for people who are active in this field. First, the clear thing is that 2008 is going to be an incredible opportunity for advocates and policymakers who care about this subject. The topic is more relevant, it's being covered more, the candidates are discussing it more. I joked with the Clinton campaign this morning that her campaign turned around on Friday when she released her poverty proposals. But clearly there's an opportunity here to make your case. And I think the second thing is that words are clearly not enough. Just the fact that there's coverage is not going to have an impact on what the next administration does. I think Bridge and I both share this experience that politics is really the competition of ideas, and that now is the time where the ideas should be competing and there should be a healthy debate about what we should do. And that argument we should be seeking to come together and find areas of disagreement and areas of agreement so that the next administration has an agenda that they're owning. And I think that's part of what we've tried to do at Spotlight, where Bridge and I try and edit and bring in commentators from different points of view, but with a thread of discussion. And I think in the end, our view is that that argument will lead to both new good ideas and also a kind of inoculation for the ideas when we can find common ground and some real clear thinking about how you would actually implement things and not just using political rhetoric. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I really enjoyed collaborating with Bridge, and hopefully it will survive the campaign season.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Tom. Actually, when David referred to Becky in that stream of Senator Obama, Senator Clinton, Senator McCain, Becky, I thought Becky had been all of a sudden thrust into the presidential election cycle, which might be a good thing. I want to thank Tom Freedman. It's been a privilege to work with him. We had the blessing, really, of briefing then 8 presidential candidates on a range of issues in the fall, and the first issue that they requested was economic security. And one interesting dimension of that was looking at how a third of the workforce are now independent workers who aren't part of this social safety net that was designed really from the New Deal on. Also want to thank the Annie Casey Foundation and EOS for their extraordinary support of the Poverty Spotlight. And it's encouraging to see so much brain power in one place on the issue of poverty. I had the privilege of working with Ron Haskins on the Hill, really watching Ron Haskins through the lens of the Ways and Means Committee do the extraordinary work under welfare reform, and then had the good instinct to ensure that he was in the White House and a part of the administration in designing policies that would help uplift the poor. A new election brings new hope. When I think about people like Ron and Wade Horn, Bill Galston, who's just been an extraordinary leader on these issues for so many years, and then Tom Freedman, who I've had the pleasure to collaborate with on this particular project, it gives me hope that we might be able to vault this issue to a higher place than it's been in the past. And I think candidates who are not only appealing to their bases, but reaching across the aisle provide a good platform from which we could design policies that would attract more sympathy. In addition to the media study, we've spent a lot of time in the poverty spotlight attracting people with diverse views, and I wanted to highlight and thank them. Congressman Charlie Rangel, my mentor and advisor in life, social scientist James Q. Wilson, Stephen Goldsmith, Ron Haskins, Wade Horn, Will Marshall, Katie Campbell, Max Finberg, Mill Duncan, Al Fromm, all of whom provided thoughtful ideas on the site and commentaries that the public and the press and the campaigns and others are seeing and discussing. Out of the coverage, increased coverage of poverty in the public domain and the hopes for more focus from the presidential candidates, I wanted to just quickly highlight 5 key issues that I saw emerge from these wonderful commentaries and the more than 100 reports that I've actually had the privilege of reading in the last 4 months in concert with this project. I think Republicans and Democrats would agree alike that the fundamental responsibility of government is to collect good data. Bill Galston and Bob Putnam and I have struggled over the last 3 years in creating America's Civic Health Index to introduce, like we have for economic data, good civic indicators so that we worry about and put in place policies and practices that will increase our civic health. And I must say, I think Daniel Patrick Moynihan was right that we can't solve a problem until we first learn to measure it. And the Annie Casey Foundation president wrote this beautiful piece talking about how we need, and I know it's politically charged, I know Census and the Academy and many of you in this room have spent decades worrying about how we could redefine poverty line measures. But I wonder if in addition to poverty line measures, we ought not to create a wealth index, a net household wealth index that looks at the assets and 401ks and savings and other incomes so that people aren't just above the poverty line, but actually have the means to lift out of poverty. Second, financial literacy. Should we target more resources toward wealth creation efforts, starting with making financial literacy training more widely available, and perhaps even a condition for receiving certain government benefits to maximize their value? I was struck by Mayor Bloomberg's plans in New York that create what strike me as very sensible conditions through conditional cash transfer programs to prompt shifts in behavior that will help lift more people out of poverty. Finally, or third, the Earned Income Tax Credit shift. We noticed in the IRS Restructuring Commission work that the error rate for the EITC was 25%, 5 times food stamps, and also wondered if more thought should be given to moving the EITC away from a tax credit filed with the IRS at the end of the year toward a credit against the payroll tax so that workers would boost their take-home pay as they work, not after they file their tax returns. Fourth, high school dropout and promoting marriage. James Q. Wilson, I think building on Bill's work, said that since only 8% become poor if they finish high school, get married before having children, and have children after turning 20, compared to 78% if they do none of these things, shouldn't these be larger areas of focus? And shouldn't we, as I think there's good progress to date, with 3 minutes remaining, I will wrap this up, focus more attention on the fact that 50% of minority students in the United States drop out from public high schools. They have 8 times as likely a chance to end up in prison. One of our speakers talked about incarceration costs. They slip into poverty. But in addition to the huge economic, intergenerational, and social costs, Bill and I actually discovered that the largest gap civically was between college graduates who completely dominate the civic activity of their communities and high school dropouts who are almost completely missing. They cannot even advocate for changing a system that is failing them. So I wonder if, coming out of this powerful energy in this room, what is the constituency of these disengaged, inactive constituencies that we can build up in a manner that will give them more voice and more strength? And I really think that's in part what Poverty Spotlight was designed